it's the AI, it's the voice recognition, it's all of the connectivity the car has to power that.
Innovation comes from when people get stuck.
I will one day drive from London to Cape Town.
Are there things that you're watching thinking, okay, I'm excited about that?
Autonomous vehicles are going to change the way that people move around cities and the way that cities are configured.
Welcome back to this week's Gear Change episode of the Drivetime podcast. I'm joined again in the studio by Duncan Licence, who's the head of automotive and data at Arrive and also Parkopedia. So stay tuned. We're going to dive back into mobility as a service and the technology that powers your journeys and also your mobility across cities. Duncan, in the Gear Change episode, what we try and do is just have a bit more of a light touch on what we covered in the main episode where we kind of did a deep dive into the technology that you work and live and breathe. And then we also just try and it's a shorter episode. That means if you haven't had time to listen to the main one, you can dip in and out, but then you also know where to kind of go for all the meaty stuff. So just for those listeners that didn't hear the main episode, can you just please introduce yourself and the work that you do at Parkopedia and how you're now kind of working with Arrive?
Sure. I'm Duncan. I lead as you say, the automotive and data part of Arrive, which up until the beginning of last year was called Parkopedia. And so the Parkopedia business started 17 years ago to solve one problem, helping people find parking. And I think this is a problem that even still 17 years later, we've made huge progress on, but everyone recognizes this problem. Not being able to find parking at a concert venue, driving around a city block over and over again because there's no parking. And so we work primarily with the automotive manufacturers, with BMW and Mercedes and Hyundai and various other ones, the VW brand and whatnot, and increasingly with the Chinese OEMs who are emerging in Europe, to help them create experiences in the car that help people find parking and find charging. And increasingly, we've also put a commerce layer on top of that to help them, to help drivers pay for parking or charging or fueling or tolling from within their car. The Arrive Group has lots of kind of businesses in the parking space. So in the UK, you might know the Ringo brand, in Europe, an Easy Park brand, or Park Mobile in the US, these apps that run your phone to help you pay for parking. But we also have a large transport division that helps people navigate transport, pay for a bus, a train, a tram, the tickets in a station. And so we, as a business, Arrive is becoming this kind of mobility payments platform, regardless of whether you're driving, whether you're getting the bus or the train, whether you're using your phone to pay or your car to pay, and even the payment terminals that are on the side of the road where you pay for parking using those. And so that idea of mobility payments and helping people move around cities is something that's absolutely central to our mission.
So it's super fascinating, isn't it? Because people do need to get from A to B and they do that in a number of different ways. But who knew parking was such an issue? Because actually, when you think about it, there are a lot more cars on the road now than there used to be.
Certainly, yeah.
So it's not getting any easier than it used to be because there isn't the ability or the space to be able to build a load more parking. But it's trying
in fact, there are fewer car parking spaces. In some cities, Paris is probably the best example. They've removed tens of thousands of parking spaces to make way for bicycles. And so Paris has recently transitioned from being very much a car-first city to much, much less so a car-first city. But that doesn't mean there's going to be no cars. And that mismatch between supply
they can't put them anywhere.
Well, exactly. And that mismatch between supply and demand of vehicles and parking spaces or EV chargers is something that drivers find really difficult to navigate.
Yeah. Just going back to the kind of the work that you do, this requires, and we talked about the partnerships in the first episode, the data that you're bringing into the software to enable that data to then be surfaced in a screen in a vehicle requires, that's the kind of the work that you're doing, isn't it? Is you're connecting up availability of parking, availability of chargers, all of that then sits within the kind of the map app of a vehicle, and then you can integrate other kind of payment software into that to enable you to then, your car is your payment as you're driving in. You kind of, so I think that was really fascinating that we talked a lot about convenience and what kind of drives the need for this behavior. Often I think innovation, my mother used to say, frustration is the mother of invention or whatever, or that kind of stuff. But it is like innovation comes from when people get stuck.
Yeah. And I also think the technology landscape has shifted significantly over the last few years. So stuff that wasn't previously possible is now much more possible, whether it's connectivity in a car. Cars have SIM cards in them and they're always connected to the internet. And that didn't exist 10 years ago, maybe 15, but it's now ubiquitous. And so the technology landscape has shifted in our favor. And it's entirely feasible now to make it really convenient to help someone find parking, or to prompt them to pay for parking or make a reservation, which takes all of the anxiety and all of the friction out of where do I leave my car when I get where I'm going.
Yeah.
When I explain to people, everyone understands it, because everyone has struggled to find parking and everyone has sat there in a rainy car park downloading some obscure app
with no Wi-Fi
on the slowest connection ever, and then trying to type their credit
3G.
card details. Exactly. Everyone knows that feeling. That's not a future that I think anyone wants to keep around.
We often do in this episode a bit of myth busting. So what are the kind of the myths about either the tech in the vehicle or about, because we're kind of an auto tech podcast, and I think the stuff that your superpower, Duncan, and the work that you do at the moment is about the software in the vehicle and how that's developing and evolving, and the work that you do is to build the software that then is adopted by the manufacturers that ultimately are in the service of us as mortal drivers. So what are the biggest myths around the technology that you're kind of involved with?
The myth is simple, which is the software that's in most modern cars is good enough. We absolutely have to change the way that software is built in cars to make it more usable, more convenient. The day that people stop plugging their iPhone or their Samsung into their car because the software in the car already knows where they're going, it's got their calendar, it's got their route planning, it's got all of that, and it works and it's intuitive, for me is the back of something. Some automotive manufacturers have made great progress doing that, but not all of them. And so I think the myth for me is really figuring out how to make it really super easy to use. And the crazy thing about it is the car has all this context about where you're going, what your preferences are, how it's doing, how fast it's going, the state of charge, all various other things like that. It's got all of this context. It can actually create a richer experience than your cell phone can easily. But just figuring out how to put it together in the right way that people are comfortable using is a lot more difficult than most people realize.
So my car actually synchronizes because I've signed into my Google account on my car. Yes. So it knows if I'm searching for a destination at home to see how long it'll take me to get there,
of course, yeah.
I get into my car and it knows what my recent searches were. So I just go to recent searches and I know it knows where I've looked.
Yes.
I can then just do it, or I can plug it in and just start thinking in Apple CarPlay if I want to. So I think there are lots of, like you say, some OEMs are better. Do you think consumers, because we're so used to, holding my imaginary phone in my hand, going to the app store to get the app that I need on my phone, that it's just a small nudge to get me to download the app to my car? Because actually it's not foreign to me. It's just, I maybe didn't realize I could do it on my car.
Well, that's certainly the case. There are app stores that run in cars. And we have customers who take our apps and put them into cars and deploy them. The most recent customer, Audi across all of Europe, deployed our app into all of their cars. But it still requires the driver to take an action of the sort you described. My preferred way of doing this, and the way it works with the customers who implement this most successfully, is it's not a separate app. It's integrated into the map of the car. And so when you say, I'm going here, it automatically checks whether there's charging along the way or parking at the destination, how busy the parking is. So it does that without the user being prompted. You don't have to think to check. It just does it. And then the payments thing is exactly the same, which is, do you want to pay? Yes, pay. So you don't have to download another app. You don't have to sit there waiting. You don't have to put your card details, your name and telephone number into a new bit of software. It just works. And crucially, you have one wallet that works across parking and charging and tolling. So, it's all in one place. You get all your receipts in one place. You get all of that. It's,
the receipts, Duncan, the receipts.
Exactly. And so if you travel for work, this is the thing. And so, it takes all the friction out of this for people when it's done well.
Yeah.
But as I say, some are moving faster than others. And, the fascinating thing that we see is we see this disruption to the automotive industry in Europe coming from the Chinese manufacturers. And they are, I would argue, light years ahead in their way of approaching this problem. And I'm not just talking about the size of the screen in the car, which is what most people immediately focus on. I'm talking about the way they make that software work in the car.
Yeah.
And so, there's some really interesting innovations coming out of China in the space for us, which I'm enjoying. But I wouldn't write off the Western car manufacturers yet. We're seeing some fascinating work. Arguably, the Chinese are pushing everyone to innovate faster and harder. The reaction that we're seeing from our European and North American customers are just as interesting.
I think the other thing we talked about in the main episode was how to predict when your charging is going to be needed.
Yes.
So I think that's another thing, actually. If you're in an EV and it knows when you get there, you're going to need to charge before you come back, that's game changing. Because it can say, it looks like you're going to need to charge when you get there. Should we find your thing? Yes, please. So you don't have to. I think that's the thing that will be game changing in EV adoption. Is how do you make my life so much easier by preempting what I need? And technology can absolutely do that. So, Duncan, obviously, you're very tech native and you've kind of come through, you mentioned in the main episode, like the whole world of e-commerce. So you're early in that kind of iteration of e-commerce. But for you, what's a tech tool that you can't live without? Because I think we're all so used to everything feeling automated now. But for you, what's your thing?
So I think my one, I'm South African. And so I like to barbecue. It's our national
the braai.
fish. The braai, thank you. I have to modify the way I say that for English people. And so a few years ago, I bought this little thermometer that you can put into like a chunk of meat, and it was a Bluetooth thermometer that connected to an app on your phone. And when you cook, I didn't know this before, but cooking is all about getting the meat to the right temperature on the inside of it.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you do that too fast, it burns on the outside. But this little thing, which is called a meter, good name as well.
MEAT.
MEATER. It's a fantastic name.
I'm going to buy one after this.
They are absolutely incredible. And I think I'm like on the third generation of this one now. And so you plug it in, and now your phone doesn't even have to be anywhere near it. It does something with a Bluetooth signal, so you don't walk away and it says, I'm disconnected. If you're cooking anything that isn't like, that's a chunk of meat on the barbecue, and I now even use it in the oven, it just means you literally can't screw it up. It's impossible.
Great. Okay, good. I love that. And that's the first cooking implement on the podcast. I love that. So thinking then about any other exciting innovations that you think, as a kind of somebody working in tech, are there things that you're watching thinking, okay, I'm excited about that. This is coming down the tracks. I'm looking forward to it in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, or even maybe sooner, because technology is going
I'm going to use
rapid.
an automotive one because we're talking automotive. I'm going to do 2 if you don't mind.
No, of course.
One that I think is going to happen sooner and become ubiquitous in new cars quite quickly is this agentic voice. You can talk to your car and it can do things for you, like make a restaurant booking or pay for parking. We are actively involved in working on that with a whole range of different OEMs. And so I know that's coming into series production very quickly. And I think will change the way that people interact with their vehicles. And the technology that underpins that, because, to most people, that's just like, I can talk to my car, and it never used to understand me, but now it does. And it does things like, that's cool. But the technology that underpins that is fascinating, because it's the language models, it's the AI, it's the voice recognition, it's all of the connectivity the car has to power that. There's a real interesting tech stack that probably 5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, wasn't even technically possible.
No.
And so it's moving so quickly. And this idea that your car will start doing things without you having to ask it, this is the agentic bit, for me is crazy. I'm a fan of that. And then the one that maybe is slightly further out, but probably more transformational, is autonomous vehicles. And so the way, no one knows quite how this is going to play out, but for me, autonomous vehicles are going to change the way that people move around cities, and the way that cities are configured, the way that streets are laid out, the way that all of these things, it's going to utterly upend our sense about how we move around cities. And I love that because I think it's a positive thing. These vehicles are all going to be electric, so it's good for the environment. And, I think it'll be good for consumers at the edges of society, people that are, less able, less mobile, or less, autonomous vehicles are going to transform the world for people like that. So it's not just a force for the everyday person, but for absolutely everyone in society. And I think that, and again, the technology that underpins that is fascinating. It's computer vision, it's AI, it's robotics. There's some really fascinating technology that makes that possible, which again, people have been working on autonomous vehicles for probably 20, 25 years now. And we're only beginning in the last 3 to 5 years beginning to see that work at scale. And, to your UK listeners, it's coming to London this year.
Where are they trialing it, actually? Where's the first?
I've seen Waymos driving around as trials in London. Just every now and again, you and I've spent a lot of time with Waymo and in the US. And so every time they catch your eye, you're like, there's a Waymo. But there's always someone sitting in the passenger seat and the driver's seat, and they've got a laptop out on their lap. They're clearly doing testing and learning.
Yeah.
But they've said that they will launch before the end of this year. And I imagine it'll be a very small kind of, you have to be on a list or something to start using it at the beginning. But London is a fascinating city to make that work in. It's very different to Miami or Los Angeles, but they made it work in San Francisco. So,
and that's a narrow streets, very uppy downy, trams going across. It's very, it's an interesting.
So for me, it's going to change the world. The autonomous vehicles is one of those things that at first it's just going to seem like a robo-taxi that doesn't have a driver. That's kind of crazy, but you get over it really quickly when you do it for the first time. I think the at scale effects of autonomous vehicles is gonna change the world that we live in ways that I don't think we really understand yet.
Yeah, and I don't think I've kind of got my head around it just yet. I'm very used to getting in driving, feeling in control, and having it as and when I want. But actually, that's because there aren't enough near me. I live in a very rural environment, so it's it's nice. I don't think it's going to be ready where I am.
My kids are a bit younger than yours, and I have this hope that I'm never going to have to teach them to drive.
Oh, wow.
There we go. You see, what a sales pitch. Like I that's a stressful thing for a parent to have to go through.
I've done all three of them. I taught all three of mine. And I taught all three of my boys. Yeah. And they had lessons, but it was me that used to drive them to school. They would drive to school every day, and then I would drive back. Yeah. So it was great practice for them, actually. Of
course it is. But imagine never having to do that because there's an autonomous vehicle. Now, I don't think my kids are young enough to actually do that. I suspect I'm going to have to go through the pain. But, that idea of you never have to leave your car, at the station again when you went out for a drink the night before, or like all of the different things to take your elderly relative from A to B, et cetera, et cetera. All of these possible things that are today quite challenging just disappear.
Yeah.
It becomes a lot simpler.
It's going to be driven by a number of things, I suppose, either convenience or cost. It's going to be like the cost of the driver versus the cost of the vehicle. And that's going to be the shift.
And the social change that comes with that. A lot of people earn their living by driving, whether you're a taxi driver or a truck driver or a delivery driver, that's going to be difficult to navigate.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know how that's going to play out. And like all technology transformations, generally in the long run, they turn out for the best. But that time between now and the long run is difficult.
There's always a tipping point, isn't there? I think when the technology becomes mass adoption, but obviously we're very early adoption, or so I think, we'll see. I think it will become part of a connected ecosystem, and there will be times when actually you're somewhere else away from home and you want to get in a taxi, and that might be the option and you use it, or there might be a driver and you use that. So I just think how you get from A to B will be depending on what's available at the time when you get there and how so it's really interesting. Yeah, I'll be interested to see where that goes. But while we're thinking, obviously that's autonomous driving, but the other question we always ask every guest on the podcast, Duncan, is about a road trip.
Yes.
So you mentioned you're South African. I don't know whereabouts in South Africa you're from originally.
Johannesburg.
Oh, no, I've been there a few times.
It's a lovely city, much maligned. My road trip is I've had this dream since I think I was a teenager. Still unrealized because it's a significant commitment. I will one day drive from London to Cape Town. I'm definitely going to do that.
The long way down. Are you kind of following that route? Because
you can't go that well. But I was talking to a colleague about this earlier. The challenge is you kind of have to figure out the route based on which country's at war with which other country in Central Africa, which, driving through a country is the least biggest challenge those people have. But as someone, you have to figure out which is the way. I have a way I'd like to go. It's not a way you could go right today.
No.
But I know we have this debate between what type of vehicle. So I'm old fashioned. I'd like to do it in a Defender because that's the car you're supposed to do it in.
Drive, yeah.
But no African would say that. Every African would say you're doing it in a Toyota because they're more reliable.
And this is true.
Not an advocate one way or the other, but that's what I keep getting told. You drive around in the middle of nowhere, Africa, and everyone's driving a Toyota. We
always ask whenever I go to a different country, like, what do people drive here? What's good here? And when I was in South Africa, that was the coverage. But I think again, it's reliability, availability of parts. all those good things.
Someone once told me you can fix almost anything in a Defender with a clothes hanger. I'm not sure that's true.
Or a hammer.
But I quite like, maybe the combination of the two. I know who I'm going to do it with. It's just a question of taking 6 months out of my life to do a road trip, which, is no insignificant thing. But one day.
One day. So also, while you're on the road trip, we ask for a song or a band, but you're going to have a whole playlist. But so if you could sort of like nominate something for the Drivetime podcast playlist, what would you like to add? We'll commit it to our playlist for you.
I like so many different things. I'm going to be really, really tame and boring and go with the Rolling Stones. I feel like the vibe of the Rolling Stones on a road trip it's good road trip music.
We don't have any Rolling Stones on there at the moment.
Really?
So,
I'm surprised.
I know we've had all kinds of weird stuff.
You need better guests.
I know, well, but now we have. So any particular track from the Rolling Stones, or is there one?
Oh, God. Anything from the Rolling Stones.
I'll add the Rolling Stones to the playlist for you. So it's like a bit Desert Island Disky, but we just think, what's your favourite track? We should give you more notice and go, don't forget, pick a song, not just a band.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm literally going through the catalogue of songs in my head and going, I don't know. I don't even know what half of them are called as a title, which is half the problem.
The only one I can think of is I Can't Get No Satisfaction, and that's the only
that one sprung to my head immediately. I thought, you can't say that.
No, we'll get a good one and we'll add it on. But Duncan Licence, thank you again so much for staying with us for the Gear Change episode, and hopefully you'll get your road trip booked in at some point.
It's a certainty.
Okay, you'll do that. And thank you again so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast. And I think, I'm smiling because I think I'm really excited about some of the good stuff that you're working on that could make our lives easier, and I can have a conversation with my car and I'll know where the text come from. So keep up the good work. It's been great to meet you. Thank you very much.
I've enjoyed it.
Thanks again to Duncan for staying with us for this week's Gear Change episode of the Drivetime podcast. Don't forget, if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like, follow and subscribe. You'll never miss an episode of the Drivetime podcast.